There at the bottom of your screen. You can email us. The address is thestory@kgw.com, or use the hashtag #TheStoryKGW on Twitter, or call and leave a voicemail. Our phone number is 503-226-5090. Tonight we're starting off talking about hydropower, dams. If you've watched any TV in the Portland area or much of Washington state, you've no doubt seen ads recently that are supportive of the dams.
Why is it important to protect Northwest hydropower?
Hydropower is essential to address climate change and protect salmon.
90% of the renewable energy we generate in the Pacific Northwest is from hydropower.
The lower Snake River dams kept the power on during last year's heat wave. The only way to replace the reliability would be burning more fossil fuels.
Well, some of you have asked us about these. Kyle wrote in to say some entity or person are spending quite a bit of money advertising the dams on our rivers close by, Northwest River Keepers or some such outfit. So really, who are they? Why are they stirring this up just now? And who is financing this, and to what end? Thanks for your questions, Kyle. We have the answers. You were close, but not exact on the name. It's Northwest River Partners. That's the group that represents smaller electric companies all over Oregon and Washington state. They even have a few in Montana. They do want to keep the dams going, and those are the folks who are paying for these ads. Kyle also pointed out that the ads leave out the fact that the dams kill lots of salmon as they try to swim past. Yes, we'll get to that in a bit. Let's start by showing you the area we're talking about. It involves what's known as the lower Snake River dams. Those dams are on the Snake River in southeast Washington, just above the northeast part of Oregon and not far from where the Snake flows into the Columbia River. The Army Corps of Engineers built the 4 dams in the 1960s and 70s. That's where the battle is now focused. It's over whether those dams should be protected or torn down to save wild salmon. Environmentalists and many others want the dams torn down. They argue the dams turned the Snake River into a series of shallow, warm lakes, which has nearly destroyed the entire population of wild steelhead and salmon there. And the concern's not just isolated to that area. Many have argued dwindling salmon runs threaten the orcas all the way out to the Pacific Sound and elsewhere.
The southern resident orca is one of the most iconic species we have here in the Northwest. Pretty much only eat salmon. 80% of their diet is just Chinook salmon. And so when the salmon die, the orca die.
The orcas are out there in Puget Sound. So it is a big issue. On the other hand, supporters point out that the dams provide low-cost, clean, dependable power, enough to run about 800,000 homes for a year. Many are around the Tri-Cities area of Washington. And they argue that especially now, with our region moving from reliable but dirty coal plants to clean but less reliable solar and wind power, that the dams are more important than ever. Okay, got that? That's the context now for our discussion tonight. I interviewed Kurt Miller, the executive director of Northwest River Partners, which wants to protect the dams, and again, they're the group behind the ads you're seeing on TV. I also found an excellent article about this in the Seattle Times, which pointed out that polling by the group found support for dams has fallen significantly in just 6 years. This slide, which Northwest River Partners was nice enough to send me, shows the problem. Their polling found that when asked if hydropower is renewable back in 2007 on the left side of your screen, 86% of people said yes. And in 2021, it had fallen to just 56%. Here's another even more ominous trend for the group. The top green line shows a drop from 66% to 47% of people who agree with the statement, removing the dams is an extreme solution that could do more harm than good. So fewer people consider removing the dams extreme. And the bottom red line shows growing support from 12% to 29% for the statement, we should remove the dams to protect animals and their habitat. Are you also concerned that public sentiment behind breaching the dams is growing? I think the Times report cited a number like from 12% used to support it and now more like 29% support it.
Yeah, I think that one of the reasons we really felt we needed to do this campaign is that there really haven't been campaigns like this to promote, hydropower or to kind of save the dams. And so a lot of the argument has occurred kind of on the other side, kind of in a vacuum. The proponents who have run campaigns for years to try to kind of anti-hydropower campaigns or anti-lower Snake River Dam campaigns, they've been able to have that space because they've been investing in those campaigns. But our data show, one thing that the PowerPoint didn't disclose, our data show that the more people know about hydropower, the more they support it, because of the things that we talked about, the ability of hydropower to essentially help fill in the gaps for wind and solar power when they're not available, to provide reliability in a carbon-free way. Once people understand how important that is to keeping the grid safe and reliable and affordable, we end up getting a lot of support. And so our polling definitely shows that the more people know about it, the more they support it. And so we knew this was an important time for us to get that message out there.
And just a reminder, we're not taking sides here. We're just explaining what generated this ad campaign. The group launched the campaign to raise as much as $6 million to get their side out to you. Part of the reason they're pushing the message now is Governor Jay Inslee from Washington State and Senator Patty Murray launched a study late last year to take a look at tearing down the dams to save salmon and whether there would be a reasonable way to replace the lost electricity once the dams are gone. Well, early last month, their draft report found the dams could be torn down, but the cost of replacing that electricity through other methods would run between $10 and $27 billion. Yes, that is billion with a B. Northwest River Partners hired a consultant to estimate the cost themselves. It came out much higher, as high as $142 billion.
I guess what really spurred it, though, to answer your question, wasn't those polling numbers that you and I have been discussing, but it was when Senator Murray and Governor Inslee announced in October 22nd, I believe, that they wanted to start a process to look at whether or not they thought the services provided by the lower Snake River dams can be replaced. And that's a really serious question. And, at the end of this process, they're going to make a recommendation. And we were really concerned that they would make this recommendation without people even being aware of what was at risk. So for me, the real driver was people need to know this stuff because it's going to affect their electricity bills. It's going to affect whether or not this region can achieve its zero carbon goals. And it's even going to potentially affect public safety. And so for me, I felt like it was our complete responsibility to get out there and make sure that we raised awareness on this important issue.
The final report is due out sometime between now and the end of summer, which is why you're seeing the ads right now, and you're probably going to keep seeing them for a while. And you're hoping to galvanize public opinion so that if they do come out and recommend breaching, that there's strong pushback from people who understand the value?
Yeah, I think both. I mean, we want people to reach out to them before they make a recommendation so that people, so they're aware of that their constituencies from all across the Northwest really value what these dams do for the region. At the end of the day, the Murray Inslee team has been clear. The dams can only come out, or be breached if Congress votes to do that. If the U.S. Congress, because the dams are federally owned and operated, they were authorized by Congress, so it would take an act of Congress to remove them. It's really important.
But it doesn't seem like Congress can do much of anything right now.
I have no comment on that.
Yeah, but it would definitely be in your favor, I think. My belief is that Congress will not vote to do that, but we believe it's an important enough issue. We want people to reach out and make sure it doesn't happen. One other thing. Earlier this week, the White House issued 2 reports on the dams. One looked at what it would take to restore healthy runs of salmon and steelhead on the lower Snake River. The conclusion suggested, among other things, tearing down one or more of those dams. The second report found that replacing the electricity produced by the dams is possible and would cost between $11 and $19 billion. So to sum it all up, the reason you're seeing these ads supporting the dams on the lower Snake River is because there is a growing movement to tear them down. The side arguing to keep them says they provide valuable electricity that we can count on, which is especially needed as the region moves away from coal-fired electric plants. The side arguing to tear them down says that electricity can be replaced. Yes, it comes at a cost, but that it's well worth it to restore the native fish runs on the Snake and Columbia River. So there's a lot there. What's your take on all this? What do you think about it? You agree? You disagree? Send me an email. Our address is thestory@kgw.com or call and leave a voicemail, 503-226-5090. Portland Street Response is a group of mobile mental health teams in Portland. They were created to keep police from responding to calls where they just were not needed. It has been wildly successful. But now there's a new challenge. The word is out and they cannot keep up with all the calls for help. Blair Best has our story.
What this means is those going through a mental or behavioral health crisis or experiencing an emergency with substance use may have to wait longer before help arrives.
The crews are just going back to back on calls right now with no breaks.
Teams of 2 to 3 mental health crisis responders, firefighter EMTs, and peer support specialists make up Portland Street Response. They respond to nonviolent mental health, substance use, and general welfare calls that come into Portland's 911 call center.
Even though the demand has exceeded our capacity to handle all of the calls that are coming in, it's informing how big we need to scale this program.
Robin Burrick leads the program. It started last year, focusing on the Lentz neighborhood in southeast Portland, and they got about 4 calls a day. In March, they expanded citywide. Now they get about 13 calls a day, mainly wellness checks, but don't have enough staff to answer them all.
I knew it was going to be busier. I guess I just didn't realize it was going to be this busy.
Burrick says they have 16 employees and need 42 more, and the hiring process is slow.
We don't want to just bring 40 new people on all at once. We want to be very thoughtful about how we scale and phase this program up.
In the meantime, they're taking 5 calls at a time. The rest go on a wait list or to the police and fire department.
So we have calls waiting for us to get to them, and we don't want those calls to sit there for hours on end because probably by the time that we get there, they're going to be gone.
Something that happens often. With a roughly 13-minute response time, about 40% of the calls, they arrive to the location, but the person in crisis is no longer there.
Because we have such long wait times before we can get to them.
City Council just approved an $8.3 million budget for the program, but it's still unclear if this will be enough to cover the future service expansions.
I don't think I could do anything differently. As much as I would love to be able to scale up quickly and snap my fingers, this is just part of scaling up.
By mid-October, another 13 teams will be added to the program with the goal of providing 24/7 services. Right now, they operate Monday through Thursday, 8 a.m. to 10 p.m., and for the rest of the week, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. If you need to get help from Portland Street Response, call 911. Blair Best, KGW News.
Here's a story from almost a decade ago. A bakery in Gresham refused to sell a wedding cake to a same-sex couple. Now the case is making headlines once again. When the story continues. Welcome back. Keep sending your questions and comments to thestory@kgw.com or give us a call and leave a voicemail. Our phone number is 503-226-5090. A big local story from nearly 10 years ago is making news again. A bakery in Gresham refused to sell a wedding cake to a same-sex couple. It made national headlines at the time. That case has been going back and forth through the court system for a past decade. And this week, the state reduced its fine against the bakery. Let's get you caught up. So, how did we get here? Everything started back in January of 2013 when Gresham Bakery Sweet Cakes by Melissa denied a lesbian couple a wedding cake on religious grounds. In 2015, the Oregon Bureau of Labor and Industries said the bakery violated the law by doing that. The agency fined co-owner Aaron Klein $135,000. He sued, but the Oregon Court of Appeals agreed with the fine 2 years later. Then things changed in 2018. That's when the U.S. Supreme Court heard a separate case involving a Colorado bakery that also turned away a gay couple on religious grounds. The High Court ruled in favor of the bakery, saying Colorado could not fine the business just because of its owner's religion. In June of 2019, the U.S. Supreme Court ordered the Oregon Court of Appeals to take another look at the Sweet Cakes case. The appeals court decided the Bureau of Labor and Industries fine was too harsh because it showed bias against Klein's religion. So, the agency has now reduced its fine against Sweet Cakes to $30,000 for the bakery's decision to deny service to the couple based on their sexual orientation. And that is how we got here. Moving on now. For the past week, we've been following a series of bias crimes against Asian Americans in Portland. Dylan Kesterson was arrested after police say he attacked a family riding bikes on the East Bank Esplanade. He was then charged with yelling anti-Asian racial slurs at 3 women and assaulting one of them in April. Today, a group of community organizations came together to denounce those crimes. The lawyer for the family that was attacked read this statement from the father.
We moved to California a year ago, and my family was just getting used to the language and culture. I decided to travel to Portland because I wanted my family to fall in love with America. On our first day in Portland, my wife and daughter and I rented a family bicycle on the waterfront. We were just riding our bicycle along the river road as slowly as we could walk. And then a man came up to us, targeting us because we were Japanese. He called us terrible racial slurs, and then he attacked me, hitting me repeatedly on the back of the head, and he hit my 5-year-old daughter. I felt helpless because I couldn't get away, and I needed to protect my family. I was stunned and shaken to be viciously attacked because of simply being Asian. Thankfully, there were people who came to my family's rescue. My trip to Portland, which we had been looking forward to for a very long time, was ruined in an instant. My wife and little girl said, "I want to get out of the city as soon as possible. I want to leave the United States. I never want to see this city again."
So heartbreaking. The state has a dashboard tracking the number of reports that come into Oregon's bias crime hotline, but Metro Councilor Duncan Huang says that number is likely quite low.
Living in a data-driven culture like we are today starts with really clear reporting. My organization, in partnership with other organizations like the Asian Health and Service Center, we did a survey this year of about 800 community members, in language that are Asian American. 49% said that they witnessed something that happened to their family or to themselves directly. That's half of people that were surveyed. 84% of them didn't go on to report it. So I just looked at the Department of Justice stats for last year. In 2021, 1,600 calls from our community were made to the Department of Justice to report hate and bias. But if you extrapolate that, the 84% of people that didn't report it, what does that say? That means that there could have been 9,000 to 10,000 incidents in the state. That is the scale that we're dealing with, and we have got to stop that.
Still ahead, we're going to talk about another hate crime, a Vancouver teenager killed for being transgender. Now we're talking to the judge in that case, when the story continues. If you haven't listened yet, all 6 episodes of KGW's new true crime podcast, Should Be Alive, are available now. The series examines the 2019 murder of a Vancouver teenager named Nikki Kuhnhausen, who was killed for being transgender. Last summer, a man named David Bogdanov was sentenced to almost 20 years in prison for strangling Kuhnhausen. This week, we released a bonus episode of Should Be Alive. It features an interview with the judge who presided over Bogdanov's murder trial. Ashley Korslin is the host of the podcast. Ashley, sorry, I bungled your last name there. We've worked together forever. So unusual to hear a judge willing to talk about the case.
Yeah, this was, I believe, a first for him and a first definitely for me to be able to have this opportunity. So we talked with Clark County Superior Court Judge David Gregerson, and we sat down for more than an hour, and he was really candid. He opened up about this entire experience, sitting on the bench during a high-profile murder trial, also during the pandemic. This was a case, Pat, that really began very circumstantially, and so Judge Gregerson talked about, how he thought that might play out in the courtroom, but then it evolved into claims of self-defense, where you see Bogdanov on the stand there. All the pieces that really had to fall into place from the start to the finish to even get to trial, let alone result in a guilty verdict, was quite remarkable to Judge Gregerson. And so we talked a lot about that and a variety of other topics related to this case. Take a listen. What was it about this case? You said that you will take this into retirement. You will never forget this. This is a case in a lifetime. What is it about it that really sticks with you professionally, but also just emotionally and as a member of this community?
I think because it was such an extraordinary result, given the challenges to the case as I saw them when it came in the door. The chances of being able to convict on what seemed like a pretty circumstantial case, of having all the possible things that could go wrong, of having a political climate in this country where we're largely divided, and that people could have glommed onto some part of this case that was not really germane to what was alleged and what was alleged on behalf of the defense. So, and the fact that it was a very high stakes, highly emotional 2-week roller coaster of a trial, and we were all pretty tired at the end of it. So all of that and contributed to my sense that this was truly an extraordinary case. And Nikki, went to the same high school that I did here in downtown Vancouver. So, any 17-year-old is at risk and vulnerable, but with the family situation and being trans, the challenges and the risks were just enormous. And regardless of those risks or choices or anything like that, nobody deserves to be strangled and have their body dumped up on a mountain.
Right. Is there a particular message that you will take away from this case, or that you hope it sends to the greater community at the end of the day?
Boy, I'll leave that to other people. I'm actually learning more things about the case all the time, including from your podcast. Again, I'm not the Wizard of Oz who knows everything that's going on behind the scenes, so some of your interviews and things are illuminating. I hope that this case serves as an inspiration for all those people who were on the list of the witnesses, from the crime lab technician to the detective to the people who were up there documenting the remains or et cetera. I think there's an unspoken excellence that's often out there, and it doesn't make the news very often because it's not sexy or glamorous, or it doesn't fit 140 characters on a social media tweet. But there's just a lot of really good people out there who are working hard and professionally and diligently performing their tasks. And my message and my takeaway from all this is that those people sometimes deserve, and they should in this particular case, pat themselves on the back for how the trial went down, the excellence of it, and the result that came about, that a jury was able to get the case and render its decision.
Yeah, Judge Gregerson actually referred to all of those people during the sentencing portion. He delivered this really eloquent speech to the courtroom, and he called them the bright lights in what was a very dark case. This trial, Pat, it was last August, was just fraught with a lot of dramatic moments. I mean, I think I counted a half dozen motions for mistrial from the defense attorney. There was a point where a juror was refusing to deliberate, and so everyone thought there may be a mistrial because of a hung jury. And so there's a lot to this case and a lot to our interview. It was almost an hour long. And so if you'd like to check that out, I hope you listen to that full interview with Judge Gregerson.
Yeah, and so rare to have the judge speaking so openly.
Absolutely.
I'm really glad he did it. People will learn a lot by listening.
They sure will. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ashley. You can now listen to all 6 episodes of Should Be Alive wherever you get your podcasts. If you'd like to learn more about the case, we have photos, videos, and much more information at kgw.com/shouldbealive. We'll be right back. For this week's Hey Help campaign, we're asking you to donate to Harper's Playground. They're a Portland-based organization that builds playgrounds that are accessible to everyone, including kids with disabilities. If you'd like to donate, just open your camera or on your phone and point it at the QR code right there on your screen. Or you can go to kgw.com/heyhelp. It's a micro donation drive. You can give as much or as little as you'd like. That's the end of our show. Thanks for watching.